So thanks, you guys. Thanks, um, Ethen and Zach, for a great day cruising around Stanford in a golf cart. Had a really good time. And thanks, Stanford, for this series. So when I was putting the images together for this talk, I was reminded of there's a writer, Wendell Berry. I don't know if you guys have read much of his stuff, but one of the things he writes about land in a really beautiful, poetic way. And one of the things he talks about is there are two types of land. There's sacred land and there's desecrated land. And the idea is that land is interchangeable. Sacred land can become desecrated. Desecrated becomes sacred. And when I was putting these slides together, I kept thinking about that and how these projects that I've got, a lot of them are on really amazingly sacred sites. And one of the priorities is really, for me, is to find what's special about those and really promote it in the architecture. And we work on a lot of sites that have been desecrated or feel like they'd be desecrated, or what could happen on it could desecrate it. So it's a constant process of going kind of through those. So that sort of links these projects that I'm showing tonight. I'm showing two projects that are in the country, two projects in an urban environment, another two projects in suburban environment, and then two houses that we've done just that are coming up that are in the office right now. So first project I'm showing you guys is the Musubi House. This is on the Big Island of Hawaii. It's on the Hamakua coast. It's on 100 acres, up country. It's definitely a sacred site in the sense that it was, on that side of the island, there's a lot of agriculture and sugarcane plantations that leveled and really disturbed the land and the topography. But up high where this project is, it was never really touched. It's been used. It's been grazing land and agricultural land, pasture land, but there's still huge mature ohias and huge koa trees on it. And the site, there's just a vastness to the site. You see like Mauna Kea behind it. You look down at the ocean, you see these waves of grass going down into these swells of the ocean. So it's an incredibly powerful site. And so one of the things that we really talked about doing was, beyond just what it needs to be a house, we wanted to really think about this house as sort of a tool, something that would help people inhabiting it, living in it, understand this vastness of the site. So there's this idea of scale that we really tried hard to put in this house, this way that you could relate this giant scale to human scale. One of the things that was a characteristic immediately that we responded to was up on the top, the wind was blowing, and again, there's this Wainaku grass that covers the whole site. And the only thing I could explain it to, it felt like swells, waves on the ocean. And so this idea of building the house like a boat really kind of really became important. So getting to the site it's really remote. You get off the main road and you circle up these single lane roads, crossing through cattle guards, dodging pheasants, wild pigs, and you finally come around in this gravel road. You think you're lost. You think you can't be possibly in the right place, but you come around this corner, and then this is the first view you see of the Musubi, sort of framed in by these trees. So the plan of it is it's a very simple plan. I really like plans that are legible, and again, this gets to that idea of trying to relate the vastness of the site to the house. I like the plan of this in the fact that you know where you are in the house, but you also know where you are in relation to other rooms or the outside. So it's just a rounded triangle with an inverted triangle inside that's an atrium. And if you can see the top up here is a living space, kitchen, and bedrooms on this side. It's something we're talking about in the class today, but again, this idea of a 2D strong plan and this graphicness of the house even works on. This is a brand that we came up with for the cattle on the ranch. We're working on getting this actually registered for livestock on the site. One of the things whenever we'd unroll this drawing, inevitably anybody would look at it and at the plan and the shape of it, and they'd say, "Oh, it look like one musubi." I don't know if you guys know what a musubi is, but a musubi is like it's an onigiri, like kind of it's the musubi is like the Hawaiian word for it. But it was funny that everyone would look at it and that's what they would see. So the name just stuck. It wasn't anything other than that. But so here you can see the plan, and there's the atrium in the center, the ume. This is the atrium, and most of the time, the weather in this at this site is intense. It's every day. It's either sunny, it's rainy. The rain's coming in horizontally. The wind is blowing. It's a wild site. But this atrium is pretty amazing in the sense that the doors can be open, and the way that it's projected into the wind, like the prow of a ship, like the wind can be and the rain can be coming in this way, and it'll literally just come over the top. And I've been inside of this when the rain, you look up and you'll see the rain just moving above your head. So the grass just rolls right up to the side of the building. There's, the landscaping was incredible. It was just as it was, so we left it. But again, like that idea of a ship, and seeing the grass move like the swells on a boat in the ocean. So in this conversation pit, it's interesting because you're standing there, and it really feels like you're standing in a boat at the gunwale, sort of waist high, looking at the swell of the grass moving like waves. So I've tried to explain again how remote this site is. It's so far removed, and just the logistics of building this thing was out of control. Like getting machinery up there, getting machinery down. Like during the concrete pours, a log fell across the road. Like literally, everyone carries a chainsaw because you never know how you're going to get through this site. So we started like, does anybody know that Werner Herzog movie Fitzcarraldo, where Klaus Kinski like drags a boat over this mountain in the Amazon? Well, we started feeling very similar to this, like building that house. There felt a little bit like Fitzcarraldo. It felt like in a lot of ways like doing this, pulling a boat over a mountain in the Amazon would be easier than doing the Musubi House. So again, like this is, some days it's just socked in like this, gray, cloudy, just moody, foggy. And other days it's like this. Other nights it's like this, where it's just bright sky and just moon shadows. So the next project I want to show you is another country house. This is on the Kona side above Kealakekua Bay on the Big Island. And it's a working farm. It's an amazing farm, amazingly fertile land. When we talked about putting a house on it, I felt I didn't want to dig into the farm that was growing. They have huge mango trees, huge avocados, lilikoi, everything grows so well. But as we really started investigating the site and started looking around, at the top of the property, there's a fallow pasture. And the pasture it's at the top of the site's never been used. It's rocky, really overgrown. We walked up there. We sort of followed a pig trail and into the top, and you couldn't see this view, but we had a feeling that if you cleared it, you would have there's really not a view sort of the site immediately, but there's this expansive view beyond of the whole island, the whole break of the island. So, again, like finding this thing, and that this could have been like more in the sense of a desecrated site, but sort of pulling this from it was incredible. Finding this view, discovering this view. So that view was the other thing that kind of brought me into thinking about doing this round house, where the view is so panoramic that building a round sort of shape, you'd walk into it and it really becomes immersive. You walk into the view, and you start to get an idea of walking into it like that. Here you see another view. So on a really clear day, we were working on the site, and we saw Mayao Point, which is, if you think of the Big Island as sort of a diamond, Mayao Point is the spot where the Kona side hits the Ka'u side. So if you're on a boat, the Kona side is really, really calm, really, really relaxed, beautiful, calm. But as you hit that point, the waves start coming up from the bottom, and they're coming up. The swell is much more wild, and so meow in Hawaiian means itchy. It's itchy point because it's just like kind of this change in tides. But the thing about this point is it's not visible very often, just on a few clear days. So we directed the house on that point. And the idea of navigation is it's a Hawaiian thing. It's a Hawaiian idea. And the idea that part of the thing about Hawaiian in navigation is this idea, as long as you have this idea of the place firmly in your head, you don't have to see it, but you can find it. And so half the time when this is fogged in, you don't see it, but the orientation of the house shows you where it is. We emphasize that orientation with this big loft that sort of pops up on the top of the circle, and it gives that circular shape a direction. And we started calling it the Ethen house because when you look at that house with the fin on top, it felt like an old Ethen surfboard. And it's a similar idea, like where you have a big shape. It has a lack of control, but this big fin starts to give it control in a direction. So it's a round drum. It's a pole house on the back, meaning that it's held up, it's elevated, and you walk into it at grade, walk through it. And then we've opened up sections in the front, sort of truncated the drum with an entrance on this side and a big lanai on the other side. So this is the owner. This is Mitch, and I put this photo in because he's actually outside. You can see the glass running through here, and he's actually on the lanai. But these chairs on this side over here, this is interior space. And if you look at it, this is you see the glue lambs. The glass just fits into the glue lambs. You can see where it's cut into the top. So again, an atrium in the center that the building sort of radiates off of. It's an orthogonal plan, but again, it starts to hit these curves, and those spots where this square plan, these rooms, hit the curves of the glass and the curves of the drum, really become, I think, magical moments and just really spatial moments in the architecture. And we were talking about this earlier, but this whole house and these sort of shapes start to really reward walking through it and passing through the spaces, circulation. So you can see that this is where it hits the ground on this side over here. And then it's floating on these 8 posts. It's just a typical pole house, glue laminated beams. And then they create a 56-foot ring on the outside made out of 6 curved glue lambs that we had made in Canada and shipped over. Here's how they lap. They just lap together and bolt. It was really just simple construction. I like these ideas where it's again, like Musubi, a simple shape, a simple legible shape that it grows on that. It really has more to it than just what you see at this shape. So going farther, I'm going to talk about a couple of urban projects now. First one is in San Francisco. So this house, it borders this walkway and this beautiful garden, beautiful site, incredible views, but a really challenging site because it's steep. And also you've got these issues with privacy on the other side with people walking down that side. One of the things that happens a lot with sites like this, especially in San Francisco, is the site gets really disturbed with sort of facets and stairs going back with the foundation. And ultimately, you get a lot of rooms inside that really aren't usable. They're dark. They're not the greatest of spaces. So we started kind of questioning that and thinking like, well, maybe we don't need that big of a house. And what we ended up doing, which I think was really successful. Luckily, there was access on the bottom as well as the top where the street comes through. But what we did is we built a tower starting from the bottom, a concrete garage with 2 rooms on top of it, and then span this living floor across the top, and created just a volume inside. Just so literally, we made the decision to only build space that was pleasurable and pleasant to live in, as opposed to having these dark spaces in the back. You can see the other thing is like, so this walkway going up and this sidewalk is in constant use. There's like, trainers running people up this all the time, sweating and yelling and shouting at them, and it's crowded all the time. So so this idea of how do we create privacy, but also direct this view towards the town, towards San Francisco downtown. So we put out the word with a lot of our wood connections about looking for wood for this idea of these louvers kind of came to direct the view, but also to create privacy. And around the same time, they were putting in a couple of tunnels by the Golden Gate Bridge. And so we got a line in a couple of big cypress trees, had it milled, set it aside, and it was ready when we were building this place to install it and put it in place. So these louvers, they run all the way across. Um, this is the view inside. They run all the way across from the back to the front. And you can see at the back, it's like a fence and it's much tighter where you can't look in. But at the end, it's more open and directing you towards the view. And you can see inside, behind the glass, that there's the same wood louvers, but they're adjustable and interchangeable, movable, sorry, with these porthole windows that open. So this is a view inside. This is in the living space where you see that where people could be looking in from the walkway, it's tighter and it starts to open up. Actually, these are the same spacing, but you can see just from a different angle where you can look through and not look in. And then that wooden piece, that fence continues all the way out. And at that point, it's open. And it just becomes a continuation of this line of that fence. So here it is running all the way back. This is the top. And the building, it's only 1,800 square feet of living space. You walk in and that upper floor is only 500 square feet, but we're using everything. You walk in, we really consider this gate the entry to the house as opposed to coming into the house. You enter through that gate into this garden, and the garden's the same level as the living room. And we've done a lot of things on this project that we do that I like doing in places where we have exterior volumes where we use a material that's maybe a little rougher than you'd expect on the inside, but then a little finer than you'd expect on the outside. And so you can see the cypress the cypress that we used all over. We used it for the cabinets as well. Here it is going through to the back. So you enter on the top floor and then going down, we used a lot of strategies to bring light through that tower. You can see here, there's a glass floor above the staircase on the side. You can see we used a lot of half-inch glass windows as opposed to, a typical 6-inch window. And a lot of these glass walls are adjustable and movable, which I think is something in this house that there's a lot of this ability to temper it, to make it more private, to make it more open. And also, again, like these lights, this translucent glass brings light all the way deeply into the house. This is the primary suite in the front, and you can see the bedroom or the bathroom here with translucent glass, the light going through it. So primary suite, primary room, bedroom. And this is in the situation where it's completely open. You can see the shades are up, portholes are open, louvers are open to the side, but you can also shut this whole down. You can adjust the louvers to close it. You can close the windows. You can roll down the shades. And I like the fact that it can be tuned. It can be completely adjusted however you feel like living in that place at that time of the day. Again, bathrooms stacked going down. I think it's a really experimental house in that sense that this lot was really sort of an unbuildable lot. And I think that the only reason we could build on it was to rethink how you live in the house. And I think that's something that I'm going to show on some of the projects too. But again, so the spiral staircase goes all the way down through like a spine into this garage. This is a garage door. So this is funny. The company that makes these garage doors, they typically make hangar doors for airports, and they can make these things 40 feet long. So when we called them up and we said, yeah, we only need one that's 12 feet, they're like, great, no problem. And so this thing arrives. We didn't really look at the scale of it, but I think literally what they did is they have this, whatever size it is. It was like slicing bread. They just sliced us off, 12 feet because the mechanism is massive on it. Here it is completely open. So another urban house in San Francisco. This is up in Bernal Heights on a corner. Um, for ages, it was a like a bodega grocery store. And then sometime in the 80s, someone bought it, uh, turned it into like an art studio house, built this tower in the back. Really slapped together. I think everyone thought that whoever was going to buy this was just going to tear it down and build something. But there was something really amazing about how this building fit on the site, just with the buildings around it and near it. And then the owners, and I did too, we loved how the space felt inside. It felt like a workshop inside. And so we decided to keep that space, that form, and really, again, like, I think, make something good out of what was there, find something sacred in it. So this is it in context of everything around it. Entry into the center. So one of the things that interested us about the way that the building was, it was all open, but they were using different things to sort of create space in this volume. They were using furniture, they were using walls, they were using sheets. And there was something that was nice about it. It was sort of slapped together, but that idea was, I think, a strong enough idea. And that's where this flower shape came from. So that volume is completely open on the downstairs. I'll show you a plan of it. So you can see it's just a rectangle with this really strong form in the center that creates the space on each side of it. You see the living room, which is marked 1, the dining room on the other side, marked 3, kitchen is 2, there's a bathroom inside of it. But what I like about this space, and it's similar to the Ethen house, the house that I showed you, the roundhouse, where there's that orthogonal plan stuck in it. This is, in a sense, almost the opposite. There's this shape that's inside that I like these buildings that don't have a threshold. There's not like you don't go from one room to the other through a doorway, or you don't go through. It's sort of like you'll start in one room, and as you pass through, that you'll suddenly emerge in this other space, and it's a little bit of it's a different type of feeling. Like I said, it rewards this proprioception, this feeling the space in a different way. So that flower opens up. This is the top of it on the second floor. There's a bedroom and an office. And then it finishes on the roof. It pokes through, and it's a big deck off of the primary suite on the top. This is looking east from the entry, and then spinning around looking west. Walk through kitchen. You can see how we truncated and sliced this flower form. One thing I think is, I'm really interested in when I think of when I think of Peter's house, the house before, Peter and Jan's house, versus this house. I feel like Peter and Jan's house is this box, and there's these elements of curves and round shapes in it. Where this is a different type of building. I feel like it's the opposite of that. There are these sort of forms like this that are cut out. You'll see that kind of like that switch in some of the other projects I'm showing you. But with this, you see the kitchen it's the counter and the cabinetry are the same material. Walking through the house, the backyard is really beautiful, but the height of it was really difficult to make a connection to the backyard, because it's almost a full story lower. So we created this big hydraulic, this awning window that opens up and creates this bar that you can sit at, kind of in the window in this space. And then the one thing about this that you start to see is rather than you see how it's staggered as you walk down, you see over here, you see steps coming down here, and you see this big sort of intermediate deck here, and then there's sort of bleacher seats that go down to the backyard. But sort of those transitions sort of blur that definition between being at that upper level and the lower level, and it allows a sort of connection between the two. Like, here I am sitting below talking to the owner, Marcus, and it feels like we're in a similar space. The other thing that kind of this big circular shape came from this. When you look at Bernal Heights from a distance, you see all these 4 and 12 slope pitches, you see square windows. And it's amazing that when you look at Bernal Heights, and you can notice this anywhere, this sort of square shape with this round form in it. So going back up, this is you start to see the top of the flower, and it's just a space. It gets used in a lot of different ways. functions in one way, I think, like almost like an interior landscape. And you look through it, and you can see the transparency that we've started to create with notching these corners and getting these views of the city, like views of the city through the house. On this level, you start to see the bottom of the circular window in these rooms. I think it's really, it orients you to where you kind of are in relationship to the building, to that circle. You see the edges of these circles on the bottom. There's something above it, and then in the upper primary, you see the top of it. You're on the top of the building. This upper primary it's a small room, but we've really tightened. We've managed everything. It's like a ship in the sense how it's organized. There's wardrobes on each side, a bed in the center, and the back of the bed becomes this bathroom vanity. And then continuing out, you see the top of the flower as it pokes through the roof. So this is Pam and Paul's house. It's in Cupertino. And you wouldn't think of this as a suburban house. You turn off a road and you drive through cul-de-sacs, and suddenly you make a left turn. You drive up this driveway, and you're in this beautiful oak grove. It's the proximity to town is unbelievable when you actually are there. And again, this is, I think, that idea of it was for ages an unbuildable lot, and I think it was unbuildable for a lot of reasons, because I think if anyone would have put a normal building on it, it would have desecrated it. It would have ruined anything about it that felt amazing about it, important. So when we were there, you come in, and one of the first things you start to notice is this. You hit at the top, and you look. You have this great view over the top of this canopy of trees. The canopy of trees almost feels like a meadow that you're standing in, and then walking down, you realize, or looking down, you realize that there's this ability to live in the canopy of the trees. And below that, again, like, you wouldn't believe this is in a suburban place. Every time we were there, they were deer just hanging out into the trees, and always quail running around. So this starts to give you an idea of how steep it was. So this idea of creating this meadow on top, that's on the canopy of the trees, and then walking down into the trees, almost like rather than climbing up a tree from the bottom, climbing into the tree from the top down. This is a really, really sketch, like days after visiting the site. And it's kind of shocking how close we were able to achieve it. I mean, here's this bridge that comes out onto this meadow with this sort of cabin in the center of it. So the owners are real film heads, real film buffs. And one of the movies they said they liked was Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So here we are, kind of on that roof, that meadow, with this small building on top of it that really doesn't give you any idea of what's below it. You walk into this building, into this shape, and you immediately start to see this staircase going down. So here you are on the sort of in the top of the canopy, looking over at the view, and you see the stair walking down. You start to walk down into it, and you're in this volume that's completely buried in the canopy of the trees. I'd always wanted to do a glass house, but I could never really justify doing a glass house in the sense that it'd have to be conditioned. It would really be unlivable a lot of the time. But here we had this opportunity where we had this canopy of this tree canopy that was year round that we could build a glass house in. And once we started thinking about that, and that using that house as sort of a viewfinder and seeing it that way, this idea of even, we didn't want any disturbance in terms of furniture, things to subtract from that view. So that's where this idea sort of came from, to create these sort of zones and drop them to create like a distinction and delineation in the space. So you can see the purple is the living space. It's dropped down. This is the office right here. It's dropped, sunken. It's kind of the command center of the whole house. And then around the side of this is the kitchen and dining area that's dropped down. And behind it is a hallway, and then bedrooms and storage, pantry, a bunch of other uses at the back of it. So it feels like just a big open space, but there's a massive amount of storage hidden in the back. So office space. So with this, we really wanted to keep this one material. I wanted it from one. I wanted one wood, and it's difficult in a sense finding a slab, finding veneers that you can make, finding flooring. So again, we put out the word to a lot of our wood gurus and found this amazing piece of Chinese pistachio that had blown over in Napa. We were able to buy it and actually make everything out of this one piece: slabs, flooring, cabinetry. So it really has this consistency that I think it's hard to come up with, even with similar species of wood. So this is the living room out on the point. This sunken, it's 144 square feet of tufty time couch. It's sunk in the ground. But then you can just see that there's so little disturbance. You're just looking through this viewfinder into the canopy of the trees. This is looking back. You can see the kitchen. You can see sort of behind Paul, you can see the pantry. You can see bedrooms, and it's this long doors, cabinets. They're all the same material going all the way back. The kitchen, you can see that you step down into it. So at counter height, it's 36 inches. But then that counter continues all the way down on the outside of it in the living room floor. So being here, you're stepping down. But then at this point going around here, this is 30 inches, this is 36. And it continues back and becomes this dining table. Here you can see it on that side. But with this, you start to see the dappled light coming through the place and how the trees, I mean, now you probably need to trim some of those trees. We were able to build so close by floating this building into the trees and just having those two posts. The trees could stay. We didn't disturb their root structure. You can see this dappled light. So in the mornings, you have this beautiful dappled light coming this way. In the day, it comes down to the center and sort of floods the house. And in the evenings, it's coming from the west side on the other side. So as soon as the house was finished, wildlife started coming back, checking it out. I was getting these sort of weekly updates from the owners. This is this beautiful, like 4-point buck just hanging out looking in the window. Mountain lions, turkeys, more deer. So the landscape architects that were installers that were doing this had all these grand ideas for planning all this stuff. And I was honestly never too stoked about any of them because I really love the way this looks, just with the oak trees and just the oak leaves dried all over the place. But they sort of assured us, they're like, no, we'll plant these things. It's, deer won't eat it. It'll last forever. It was great. Like the first season, all of the landscape was eaten. And it's just gone back to the way I always wanted it to be in the first place, which is this. I'm sure now it's even denser and more beautiful. So this is the Roofless House. This is a project we did, again, another suburban project in Atherton. The owners came to us and she was like, oh, I love the houses that you do that have these amazing views outside and you can live outside and really like that. I want that for this house we have in Atherton. And so we went to check it out and, talk about desecrated. It's like, this is desecration on top of desecration. It was just, this is the view out of everywhere in the house. So it's like, wow, hard to have this outside house when, you're looking at these fences on the backs of houses. But after spending more time on it and really thinking about it, it's almost like you could think about the site in layers. You could think about there's to 6 feet, there's these fences, and then to 20 feet, there's the butts of all these houses sticking up that are pretty unattractive. But then above that, there's this amazing mature canopy of trees, beautiful trees, and then above that, it was dense, and there was just sky, and having that sort of like delineation of the trees made the sky seem incredibly just vibrant and different, isolating it that way. So we started to think about these ideas of ways to sort of shift the view from looking this way, how you're used to looking up. And so this idea of walls, of ideas of cutting out some views, opening up other views, building the house inside of it. I mean, thankfully, the owner's, she's Venezuelan. I think she understood the idea of like a courtyard house, a house that's enclosed. I think it'd have been a hard sell to tell a lot of people that we want to build a house with no windows in it. But there are a few windows, but this is sort of the plan that we came. This is the plan that we came up with, and you can see. So this is that picture that you saw from the front. This is this bulb at the bottom is the cul-de-sac, and that's a view looking right into it. But we moved back from the property lines to the building setbacks, and in the building setbacks we built a wall that shades out the fences. Anywhere inside you can't see fences or any parts of the other building. So you really focus up on these trees and on the sky and on the wildlife. And so you can see it again. It's a orthogonal plan. I mean, almost without the curved shape, it looks like any of these other plans of these buildings, a ranch house, ranch style. But this has these we've created these indoor atriums inside, and that center atrium, when the doors are open, that atrium is about 50 feet by 40, so it's huge. So we started to create these views through the house, of the house, and landscape inside of it. So now the tree. So we planted both. So you can start to see what's happening when you're inside. You really can't see the buildings beyond, but you see these trees. You see the sky. Right now, the trees that we've planted inside and the trees that we've planted outside have grown up. So you start to get this connection between inside the fence and outside the fence. And the wall really starts to become a backdrop for for the trees. I think that I wanted the shadows to start to create another layer of sort of a background for these trees. You can start to see it in here. So this is that main courtyard atrium in the center. So these are just some study models. We work a lot in study models like this, but just to get an idea of starting to think about how those curves and the way the sun affects those curves through the day could create a background for the trees and the landscape that we plant inside. So we drew this shape. I drew this shape, and we tried so hard to dimension this shape, give it radiuses and curves, and it was killing it every time we do it. So eventually what we did is we just took the sketch that I drew, scanned it, and used that to create these shapes in full size. You can see like that one's 213 and the bottom 212, and they fit together like a jigsaw puzzle. So just that shape that we drew this big, we just extruded it up. And you can start to see here the shadows. I like this picture because you start to see, without the landscape in it, you really start to see how the curved shadows start to work in this space. And it's different, again, like from an orthogonal building, the curved shapes, the shadows you get are really different and powerful. So here it is with under construction, and here it is finished. And you can start to see the shadows inside, the landscape, and how that back wall doesn't give you a finite wall. It gives you sort of this idea of a permeability to it. So on the side, this is the main entry into the house, and with this big droopy shadow that kind of moves through the day. So this door is it's a 7x7 pivot door that opens, and when you open it, you come into another open space when the doors are open. So that's why this idea of it being a roofless house really felt that way. It really feels very experimental living in it. It feels really unique and different and exciting being inside of it. You open this door and you expect to be inside of a house, but you're still outside again. We use the same, terrazzo on the floors. It's at the same height going through it. Or sorry, this is travertine, not terrazzo. The windows all pocket back into the walls. And again, like an early version kind of the flower house. This was happened before, but this idea of buildings within the building that's creating, landscape at a distance looking through the house. I always like these. This shape it's interesting because it's bigger than furniture but smaller than architecture. It's sort of in between. You can see how these straight forms intersect with the curved shapes. This is looking to the back of the house for the living room. The kitchen is sort of off to the side over here. and they open into this big courtyard in the center. And then in the rear of the house, it's a lot more open. There's a lot more opportunity to have it open to the site and the oak trees in the back. So I want to show you a couple projects that are in the office right now. So the first project is Villa Chalchihuit. This is down by in Mexico near Zihuatanejo. It's really a kind of remote site, kind of near a great surf break. This is the site. It's cast in place concrete house. That's pretty much what everyone builds here. Walking around here, you see a lot of, there are a lot of Americans that have moved down there, Canadians, and they're building kind of their idea of Canadian house, American house there. You see a lot of people from Mexico City building their version of a modern house there. What I got really interested in seeing was rather than trying to transplant these ideas from different places into this spot, I got really interested in seeing some of the really just farm ideas around and just really ideas that they've been using ideas that have been happening for a long time. So just before I get into that, I want to show you a little bit of the plan, just this sort of triskelion plan, windows buildings, rooms and gardens sort of interspersed between each other. On this lower floor, there's 2 bedrooms, a big outdoor living space, and you enter through this entry garden. Upper floor has 2 living spaces, 2 outdoor, kitchen and dining room, and then an enclosed sort of a primary suite. So back to that idea of building using these techniques that I saw that I really liked. One of the things that I saw was this. You'd see this. This is called a pata de venada roof or gazebo roof, and it's just made from sticks that are gathered up in the mountains. And you'll see these piles of them where people have collected them, and they've broken them into groups of all the same distance and almost the same shape, same curve, and then they fit them. They get fit together. Typically painted just to last longer, but the shadows are amazing on these things. So that was something that we saw that we really started to like. The other thing was just, again, these really simple brick walls that are just, the shadows that were coming off of these, not a solid wall, but this sort of transparency was really interesting and something that seemed really appropriate. Like this, so Hawaii, we work in the jungle a lot, but in Mexico, it's just a different type of jungle. They don't get weather, they don't get rain here for 6 or 7 months out of the year, so it's dusty, it's hot. So this idea of building the house and then creating this skin around it that could dampen the light and dampen just the wind or dampen the dust and everything became almost like a veil around this hard form. These pieces became these ideas started to work for it. So here you can see inside, this is the cast in place building, the living room upstairs, the brick wall below, triangular letting light in, this jungle coming through it. And up on top, the pata venada kind of wood coming down and creating this narrow slit that you look through. So there's this dematerialized layer around the building that kind of protects it from views, protects it from the weather, from the sun. This is up higher from the living room, looking out over the top of that, looking down into the garden. And in the spaces between the concrete building and the brick wall, we've put things like outdoor showers, these secret little patios that come into it. Here you can see the light that comes through that space, and it's dark and cool inside. It really does feel like you're in the jungle, and you feel this dappled light coming through. In this outdoor living space, protected from rain and from sun. Does somebody need to get that? So the last project I'm going to show you is a project we're doing up in Gualala, just above Sea Ranch. It's an amazing site. We feel there's just not very many sites like this left to build on. This is on, right across from Highway 1 on this cliff. We're doing a lot in terms of with the landscaping, going back and pulling out all the invasive and non-natives and really thinking about how it reacts, how the building should react to it. And I love the history of man-made buildings in this environment up here. You know, there's Fort Ross, which I think is just these strong forms, so at place in place there, but still so separate. You know, the Sea Ranch houses are great in that same idea that they're simple, they fit in. They always feel like really um, uh, just optimistic, you know, and like really living kind of with a connection to the land. You know, these are the early Sea Ranch architects who worked on these, this idea. I feel like when I go up there now, a lot of times, like the ideas, these sort of experimental ideas of living, kind of have been lost. I see a lot of big buildings up there that maybe are just more like McMansions on golf courses that are, you know, they're covered with you know, vertical grain cedar, but they've lost this. And so I really wanted, with our ideas that we're thinking about for this, was to take where these guys left off and add to it, and to take it farther. So I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to sneak in another project that I've done. This is a houseboat that we did in Sausalito that really follows that same idea, where we were kind of like looking back at what the houseboats were in the 60s and 70s, the ones that Chris Roberts built and different people. I mean, as it is now, you walk down there and there's, again, like, you know, there's like a McMansion that's floating, which to me, like, I was more interested in that idea of community, that idea of experimental living, that idea of questioning whether it's a boat or a house that these buildings had. But again, like taking this and not stopping here, and taking it farther, taking it to the next step. You know, I don't really like want to live in this, but I like the idea of this, and I want to think of what's the next step from something like this. So that brings us back to this part. No, that brings us back to Sea Ranch. So this is what we're doing up in Gualala. It's we're, you know, restoring the grass the way as much as we can, the way that it was. It's a tiny footprint. The footprint is only 1,300 square feet, but there are these tall volumes. Like there's on this side, there's, you know, there's 2 bedrooms. On this side is a kitchen, living room sticking out that side, and it's a tall space. It's like 28 feet tall, all covered in wood shingle. Will weather really beautifully. This idea of having it change with the weather, like just like the landscape does, like everything else there does. Yeah, so that's it. I want to just finish with this and open up for conversation. Thanks. Well, first off, I had a really good time with you guys today.
Oh, thanks.
It was really fun, like checking out the campus and seeing, just again, like that idea of time and buildings being built in different times, and just how it's a complete picture of all of that.
And what was your favorite building on the Stanford
campus? Oh, you're gonna embarrass me now. No, it was definitely it was the law building that SOM did in I think the 70s. It probably no one in here even looks at it and thinks anything about.
Crown Library, Crown Law. Yeah.
Yeah.
Controversial pick.
Controversial. Yeah, there's a lot of conversations about it.
We all like it, but I think what we were telling Craig, we think most people on campus probably don't like it. It's pretty rough. It literally looks like, you know, concrete corduroy.
It's a building for architects. I think it's a building that architects. It's sort of like there's things that I think about it that I mean, it's not fair to say what's your favorite building, because I think there's so many other buildings that are great. I mean, that's cruel.
People ask us all the time.
That's cruel.
Yeah, we're throwing it at you.
I guess the thing that I like, again, the thing that I like about that building, it's from a heroic time. It feels like there's just simple ideas to it that I think they really pulled off well, and it just rewards spending time in it to really experience it. It's not like a big flash. We were talking about this earlier. Like I think a lot of architecture now, like there's a big strong move. It's crazy. It's like we're spanning, you know, 80 feet with that, and I think that's great. But I think there's also something strong about these other buildings that are maybe a little bit more intellectual in a way that really, the details are smaller, but maybe more satisfying.
One thing, so you showed so many projects I haven't seen before.
I tried to.
Yeah, thank you. Because, you know, a lot of the students say, well, why do I need to come to this lecture? I'll just look at their website. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
I thought this was just for us up here. Just to talk about it.
Okay, be louder. That one doesn't work. That one works. Good. So, I mean, I think we've talked about a little things before the lecture, but maybe a theme that came up today in our discussions was this idea of alchemy and kind of turning the ordinary into something else and
Extraordinary.
extraordinary, as perhaps the theme of this series would be. And maybe just kind of your view on kind of how you think about creating architecture as something beyond what it's made of.
Well, I think that idea of alchemy is perfect because I mean, a good building and a bad building are all made out of the same materials, you know. And I think like when you think about alchemy, what that is just alchemists where the idea was I'm turning lead into gold, this magical idea. And I think that's what good architecture does. Something we talked about a lot today.
So one thing I noticed as I observed as a thread through your work is like I feel like maybe you're inspired by Khan just a little bit.
Who's not?
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
but
it's fair.
It was so nice for you to see somebody kind of play with, squares inscribed in circles, circles in plan made up of triangles in elevation, and this idea of really simple geometries that never go away, ubiquitous, as we said, right?
You said it, perfectly well.
I pronounced it correctly.
Nice, well done.
And I just wonder like where that comes from for you and why you think that still holds up in 2025, that these shapes and these forms all still really resonate with us.
They've been there forever. You see that, like, I think of like the Pantheon. I think of so many buildings that, and to me, I think like architecture is it's a maturing process. And to me, like, I feel like I keep looking back and seeing, I want to create these things that sort of, they're not copying that stuff, but they are using those tools that have been with us forever when we talk about architecture. I mean, it's easy just to blow someone away with a garage door that opens like that. But, I'm kind of bored with that now. And it seems in a lot of ways like I'm tired of, I think the projects that I'm doing right now, they're less fussy details. Like I feel like a lot of times, people start to solve architectural problems by tightening up some detail and making something like this staircase it's all the staircase and there's all these crazy details on it. I'd rather do something architecturally that doesn't depend on those details. And I think that was like, in Mexico, it was fantastic going down there. And I'm not gonna force someone to build in a way they don't want to build. I'm gonna like bring up what they're doing and I'm gonna use it how I want to use it and manipulate it differently. So that just feels like a maturity to me. I mean, I think that's part of the reason I keep harping on that the SOM building, the law building is, again, it has such old solid values, but it's not an old building, which I think I kind of talked about that a lot with, like, I think the Sea Ranch project and also the houseboat, in that sense of like I have an appreciation for architecture from that time, like heroic modern architecture for the 50s and 60s. But I'm not some mid-century guy. I feel like that stuff is great, but it's not the end all, beat all. It's a foundation. And yeah, whatever, that stuff, I look at it and it's, bless their hearts. It's endearing. It fits that time. But I want to take those ideas and take them farther, take them to a place that gets more. I'm really interested in that idea of new and old sort of coming together. And I think that's part of those big, strong shapes, the strong geometries, pyramids, Pantheon, things like that.
Yeah, I mean, this one, the last one is sort of, that seems like a new era for you, for the, like lean operation, massing, subtraction.
But I mean, it really came from, I think, like all these projects, they're bespoke. The clients are really a strong part of it. And I think that this came from that. It came from really looking around, looking at Fort Ross, looking at the good versions of the houses in Sea Ranch. And that's where this came from. I think it has parts of that. We were talking about that on campus today. Like the best projects, I think, are the ones that take that sort of idea that Stanford architecture is this, but manipulate it. They don't completely go off the other end where they say that it's just its own thing. It's this contradictory thing. But the really smart projects are the ones that I think use those in a different way that you haven't seen before. So I think that's really what this is. Like I look at it and it feels like I'm kind of, I love that thing where I do something and I'm like, whoa, this is a different territory for me. This feels a little uncomfortable. And this sort of feels that way, but in a really positive way, like an exploration, like I'm moving into a different, just these same ideas moving through each project. Like I always say that I feel like I see them all as just one project, as one idea that just it's like action reaction going all the way through it. And the latest one's really that way, I feel.
I mean, one of the things that I find so interesting is that you have this strong base and kind of pure geometries, but in a way it's inverted. It's about the experience of being in them rather than like sitting back and looking at them. And maybe you could kind of speak to how you use these geometries to facilitate movement or to facilitate the experience of the spaces.
That's really, really interesting. It's really good. Yeah, that idea, but I mean, I think that idea of seeing the geometry, but being in the geometry feels more powerful. I mean, I think it's as simple as that. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's one thing to see it from a distance, but it's another thing to experience it. I mean, I think those experiencing like those, where the orthogonal buildings intersect with round buildings or curved shapes. There's like a magnetism and there's a feel between it that's we're talking today about proprioception and that idea of movement. But yeah, I think I didn't really answer your question, but I think like, it's as simple as that.
Right.
I like talking, but I like that idea of talking about it. That idea of those strong shapes. I think it's interesting in a way that those ideas kind of are they're not lost. They're definitely not lost, but it's interesting how they sort of surface in different ways.
Maybe we could tie that back to something that came up in the discussion with the students, which I thought was really fascinating. It's like maybe your take on the difference in the experience of skating and surfing, and how you could kind of relay that into architecture in some way.
Well, we were talking about proprioception. We were talking about that sort of like those body and space is really kind of the initiation into architecture, I think, in a lot of ways. And we were talking about the difference between, like, I was talking about the difference between skating and surfing. Or skating, everything's static and you're moving through these spaces. But surfing, it's the exact opposite. It's like you're static and everything's moving around you. And so I think those two, they're almost like mirrors, reflections of each other. But I think that body and space idea, is at the base of, I think, the architecture, the way I see architecture. It's really like it's a balance thing. It's a motion thing.
It's really interesting to see the contrast between when you're doing urban and when you're doing, the middle of the big island, and you can just get the building out of the way and just show pure glass everywhere, because why wouldn't you want to just see that view? But you have somehow translated that to some of your San Francisco homes too, and really focused on that outward experience, but still tied it to San Francisco vernacular. Do you prefer one or the other? Do you like the challenge of making San Francisco feel like Hawaii, or vice versa?
Well, I mean, we've been living back and forth between San Francisco and Hawaii for the past 25 years. And, people always say, oh, do you want to live in Hawaii all the time? And we say, no, do you want to live in San Francisco all the time? I love that being in between both places. And so I really feel like, and people always say this, that the work that we do kind of fits in this weird Venn diagram between like, Hawaii. That's why this is a different kind of talk than I've done before, where I really tried to put together this variation of work. And it was interesting for me to do it and starting to see the similarities that I saw coming through it. And a lot of them were really site specific. That idea of land based, that idea of like, again, like that Wendell Berry idea of like the connection to land, visually, but also just, over time and over how that land has been used, why it's not been developed, why it's not been used. What can you add to it that makes it better, makes it fit in more. I think that was really what I think these sort of images really wanted to kind of for me to kind of, in my own thinking process, was to just to relate those. yeah, it's interesting seeing them together and seeing the similarities between them. I see like that idea of if there's no landscape, creating like landscape inside of landscape. That idea of where volumes intersect and where they imply transition, but they don't make like a border that you cross. I mean, these are just old architecture ideas. I think like, it's,
Well, it's nice to look back on a couple of decades of work now and see a common
yeah, for
thread
sure.
that you didn't necessarily think about as you were moving along.
For sure.
Especially your early projects, they're so site specific or inspired by this type of roof or this type of brickwork or this type of, I don't even know what that sushi thing was.
The Musubi.
Yeah. Or the,
It's highly inspired by that.
surfboard. It's like,
Well, I don't think either of those are even inspired by that. I think they kind of just like, in a weird way, came up. I think other people started calling it, like the Ethen before I started calling it. And there's
so that wasn't the inspiration.
no, not it was the
What
opposite.
people called it after.
It was really the opposite.
Yeah.
The Musubi definitely,
Yeah.
Ethen a little bit closer was that, but again, I think that sort of as a metaphor, like those kind of work in a sense, like that the Musubi idea, the ume in the center of this thing is like the atrium, the shape as well as the surfboard as well.
Looking at some of these today and hearing you talk about them, I've started to categorize them a little differently in my head, but I'm kind of moving some ideas, in the way that I'm setting up the universe of architects in my mind, closer to like Lautner and like some of what he's doing on like these unbuildable sites, and that you all of your projects are very site specific, but then I'm starting to see a theme of really challenging locales and letting that start to be an adjutant in the best way.
That's been super interesting to me. Like with all these projects, I think that's why they start to look different, because I think like listening to what the site wants to be. Like I think about, I think like, the flower house, that's a perfect example of like, we could have just torn it down and started from scratch, but there was something that was kind of intrinsically interesting about just keeping that similar shape and working within it. Yeah, other places it's a little bit different, but yeah, that idea of listening to the site and kind of and letting that's really something that I'm interested in. I mean, again, like I just feel like with me, we were talking about this a little bit in the class today as well, but I want to just keep challenging myself and experimenting with these ideas, and I want to only do this as long as it's interesting for me to keep doing it. As long as I don't want to get to a spot where this is it, I'm just going to keep doing these. It's an incredibly interesting art exercise. Like I always feel like I never would trust an architect that doesn't have an art practice. You know what I mean? Like that sense, like I think you need that outside sort of input to really complement what you're doing, what you're building. That idea of, I think that idea of the best architecture, it's solving a problem, but it has some kind of like spatial architecturalness to it, which I think gets lost so much. This artness to it that's really intangible. Atmosphere, like we were talking about today. I think when those two come together, that's just poetry. That's the best.
So the last thing I want to ask you is just because there's some students here. I know you talked to students earlier, but there's some more students here. What's one thing, looking back on your strange architectural journey, self-proclaimed fired by the best architects in the world?
Not in the world, in San Francisco.
Okay, in San Francisco. What would you tell a prospective young architect about to start their journey in this world that would help them?
I think like the only thing you can learn in school is sort of to be self-motivated, to really know, you're not going to get it from other people. I mean, you're not going to get anything but what you put into it and what you take out of it. So I would say, yeah, learn self-motivation. Like I remember one time, like in school, I did this project, and I had this one. All these professors were just like fawning all over it. It was so great. And then this other professor that I really respected, that I didn't really know, he came over and just tore it apart. And I remember just being staggered, just like walking out and just kind of like walking down from the architecture building in Cal Poly and sitting on the railroad tracks. My head was just spinning. And it sort of dawned on me. It's just sort of like, wait, it's like everyone's going to do this with architecture through my whole career. I just have to do what I want to do, what I think is right. And I think that's sort of was an incredibly important and valuable moment for me.
Thank you very much, Craig Steely.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks.